Unfortunately, I got exposed to a lot of the.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the work session of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for April 25th, 2016. Tonight we have one advisory committee interview.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. We have scheduled Ryan Welsh for interview for the Open Space Advisory Committee tonight. We have, I think, 3 vacancies open on the Open Space Advisory Committee, so we wanted to get Ryan down here so he could meet with you and answer any questions you have, and he could be considered for an appointment.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your interest.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you applying. Why don't you maybe give us a brief introduction on yourself, and then
Sure.
we might have some questions from the board.
Father of 2 daughters living in Superior and Rock Creek. They both go to Superior Elementary. We've been in Superior 3 years, but in Boulder County and vicinity for about the last 15. Born and raised in Colorado, was out for a little bit during, I was in the service for a bit, so I was out of the state for that. And I don't know, I love Superior, and I go to a lot of the town events and see the other members talking about Parks and Rec and the Open Space Committee, and that has piqued my interest in wanting to be involved in those committees.
Great. Thank you. Questions from the board?
I'll go.
Okay.
So Ryan, what's your schedule like, and can you regularly make that 6:30 meeting on the second Tuesday of the month?
Wednesdays.
Oh, God. Second Wednesday of the
So
month.
for work, I travel occasionally. It's usually once a month and only for a couple days, so I should be able to make, I would say, most of the meetings. But I do travel a little bit for my work.
Okay, that seems to be the number one reason people are having to leave, is because they cannot make most of the meetings.
Okay.
Attendance is a good thing.
Sure. Well, I plan to work my schedule around it as much as I can.
Okay.
Okay. Chris?
Have you been to any of the OSAC meetings?
I have not. No, I have not attended any of them yet.
Okay. So if you, I guess thinking 5 years out, I mean, what would be your vision for open space, or what the Open Space Advisory Committee does? What
Well,
should focus on?
okay, that's a good question. I would say that, from talking to some of the people that are on the committees, the mission is to continue to look at space that's available for the land, and also continuing on education of the open space that we have. So the vision would be that I see would be to continue to evaluate how Superior manages its open space. If there's land that becomes available for purchase, or however that, I don't know the details of how the budget is allocated to those actions, but figuring out the best ways to allocate those for any land that becomes available. And also the different outreach programs that I see going on, like the Coyote Walks and other community programs, keep getting more involved. We're trying to get more of those type of things going.
Okay, good, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, others? Okay.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate your application. We'll be acting on it later.
Well, I did have.
Yeah, sure.
I was just looking at your application, and so I noticed you're not familiar with the town's comp plan, open space trails master plan, and open space summary report, and so that gives me a little concern.
Mm-hmm.
That you're, wanting to, and I don't know, that's a big problem, but it,
Well, that question's a tough one for me, because when I look at it and it says familiar, I mean, I can go and read them, but am I familiar with it when I read through the document? Maybe not, but I have looked at them.
Okay.
I'm an avid runner, so I get out on almost all the open space I can in the community, so I'm familiar with the areas, but, how familiar with the plan? I can't say that I know it that well.
but I guess you have an idea of what the committees do, then.
Mm-hmm. I do.
Okay. One final question that I ask all applicants is, do you have any potential for conflicts of interest, perhaps with work, like you design open space trails or something for work, and you might have a conflict of interest?
No, I work in high-frequency electronics, so I think
Okay.
I'm pretty safe there.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, anything further for the work session? All right, we'll adjourn the work session. And shall we just go ahead and call to order the meeting, regular meeting, or wait? Okay, we'll pause for a few minutes. So
Pause the,
4-minute or so recess, and we'll start at
pause
7
that
o'clock.
refreshes.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees for April 25th, 2016. Phyllis, could we have the roll call, please?
Sure. Mayor Clint Folsom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Deborah Williams.
Here.
Trustees Joe Sorelli.
Here.
Rita Dozell.
Here.
Elia Gregores.
Here.
Chris Hansen.
Here.
Sandy Pennington.
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
Town Clerk Paul Sarden here.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Have any changes?
I have just a quick question on 11C. Don't we usually see a signature page from the sheriff approving those?
Yeah, that's the way we were doing them in the past. Some things changed with the last application, which was Old Chicago's, to where now we're getting we've always been getting reports from the state on violations.
Right.
And the sheriff's office has been doing checks, but just in the county, so it wasn't enough to wasn't what we were looking for as far as checks. So we're just going with the state notifying us of violations, and then we notify the board, which is what we've always been doing.
I knew we were going to change, but I didn't know we were going to stop having that signed document from the sheriff's department. So
Yeah.
we're not going to see that anymore at all.
Not for renewals, only for new licenses.
Okay. Yep. Then I have nothing.
Or if there's a problem. If there is a problem with the license, then we would provide more detailed
Okay.
reports from the sheriff's
Thanks.
office.
Okay, anything
Did
further?
Deborah have something?
No, I was just gonna
Oh,
Motion.
motion.
Okay.
second.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Williams, second by Trustee Hansen to approve the agenda. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Thank you. Next is item number 8, reports, questions, and issues. Who would like to start? Trustee Pennington?
I think I only have one thing. Congrats on another great Arbor Day. A bunch of us were there, and it was well-run. Lots of people this year. So thanks. That's all.
Okay. Trustee Gregorius?
Yes, Tree City USA for the 13th year in a row, right? Which is great. We also had a meeting last Wednesday. The Louisville City Council and our town board and mayors and staff met together in the best location ever we've met, I think, which is the golf course, the restaurant. So I'm hoping we can have more meetings over there, especially in the summertime. I guess the biggest news that came out of that is the old Sam's Club facility and what they may or may not do with it. So I don't know if you want to expound a little bit on that or what and what impact it might have on us. But
Yeah, the city of Louisville sent out, I don't know if it was a request for qualifications or a request for proposals from developers to maybe redevelop that Sam's Club site. It's within an urban renewal authority, which they recently formed last year, the city did. And so that Urban Renewal Authority board is reviewing the proposals they received, and one of them is for a concept grocery store. King Soopers has been mentioned, but I don't think has been specifically identified. And so they're going through that process now to determine what the next steps would be for the city and if that's a concept that they would like to proceed with.
okay, thank you. And also that Dr. Cog is awarding our town and the city of Louisville for the Divergent Diamond, a big award that's coming up this Wednesday, right? We can also show this. I don't think, yeah. We made the cover of Public Works. And the last thing that they shared with us is the recreation facilities in Louisville. Was it $25 million bond to expand the rec center in Louisville? So that's a pretty significant move. Mostly for the senior citizens and maybe their swimming pool too, to upgrade, I think. Possible, right. Yeah, right. So, but the biggest takeaway, I think, from that is that the collaborativeness that our two towns have, I think, is at an all-time high. It's great to see how well we're working together and looking for other opportunities to work together. So, good neighbors.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Williams?
Yes, I went to that same meeting, and I always love to collaborate with the City Council of Louisville, so that was a great meeting, and ditto on all the same information. And I also have my first Fridays that I'm going to be holding next Friday, May 6th, the first Friday of May, and it's at Starbucks at 7:30 a.m. to 9:30. Drop on by anytime. And that's about the shortest I've ever done.
Okay, thank you. On April 12th, I attended a small business administration meeting in Westminster organized by the Westminster mayor. He got a couple of us mayors together to meet with leadership at the Small Business Administration, learn a bit more about their group, and that was very useful to kind of stay in touch with what they're doing in our area. And on April 12th, we also had the State of Superior event. That's where the town manager and I gave about 30 minutes of presentations on what's going on in town, and then we allowed for question and answer for the other 30 minutes. It was well attended. We had about 25 people there, and I appreciate those that came out for that. And probably do future ones of those, might do future ones in the town hall. I had a couple of people suggest that they be done where they could be videotaped and perhaps watched over and over again, so we might look at doing that. April 13th through the 15th, the 36 Mayors and Commissioners Coalition had our annual trip to Washington, D.C. We had representatives from Boulder, Longmont, Louisville, Lafayette, Boulder County, Superior, Broomfield, and Lafayette and Erie were first-time attendees at that event. They just joined the group last year, and so this was their first trip to Washington, D.C. Met with 7 different House of Representatives members or their staffs, both U.S. senators and several agencies, all in 1.5 days. So it was quite a busy trip there. Primary purpose of that trip is transportation issues. We updated them on the U.S. 36 opening and progress that's been made there. Many of them were directly involved with that, so they were familiar with it, but it was just an opportunity to kind of say thanks for their support and report back that the success that the reconstruction was having, the success of the bus rapid transit, increasing ridership about 45% in the August 2015 to current period, so that was great news. And told them about future priorities for this corridor, which are additional bus rapid transit services for Boulder to Longmont, east to Louisville, Lafayette area. Overall, it was a great trip and good to build relationships with their neighboring communities and our representatives at the federal level. Last year, newly elected Senator Cory Gardner asked the people in attendance if they would send him photographs of their communities from around Colorado, historical photos, and I took him up on the offer to do that and sent a picture of Superior's industrial mine, and that's now displayed in the senator's office. So I got a picture with him on the trip, so that was kind of neat. So if you're ever in Senator Gardner's office, be sure to ask for to see the picture of the town of Superior 100 years ago. So that was neat. April 21st, I also went to the Louisville Council meeting, thought that was very good. And that night I went to a reception for the opening of the A-Line train, got to ride the A-Line train out to the airport. And
Took the A-train.
Took the A-train. And very cool new amenity to our area. So it's we should all be very proud that that's now part of the metro area. And great opportunity there. On the 22nd, I attended a retirement and promotion ceremony that the Boulder County Sheriff's Office had, and it was great to see some old friends there and attend that event. And then, of course, attended Arbor Day on the 23rd. So appreciate that. All right, I have a few upcoming announcements for upcoming events, but I'll let others go next.
Okay.
Trustee Hansen.
I also attended the meeting with the Louisville City Council. Always good to meet with them. Agree with the rest of the board. Nothing more to report on that. I had attended a ProStack meeting last Wednesday. Had a considerable presentation from some folks that are here in the audience tonight that I sense are going to present again. And we had considerable conversation about or discussion about the Rocky Mountain Greenway that we're going to be discussing more tonight. There's also a good conversation in ProStack. They've been working on amenities, different amenities that need to go out through the town, such as playground equipment. So this town's in good hands when it comes to the parks and amenities with our ProStack and OSAC committees. That's it.
Thank you. Trustee Sorelli?
I don't really have anything to report except that I have had the opportunity to do 2 morning workouts on Williams Field since it's been rehabbed. And aside from it being too cold at 6 o'clock in the morning, the field is great. It's very happy with it. And sorry I missed the Louisville meeting, but babysitting grandkids took priority on that one, so.
Right. Trustee Dozal?
I did also attend the State of the Town presentation by the Chamber, the Mayor, and the Town Manager, and it was interesting to be able to sit in the back and listen to the presentations. It was well done. Attended the OSAC committee meeting before Trustee Pennington because she had other family matters that she had to attend, and the primary discussion was also on the Greenway, so I think their OSAC members are here to discuss that. And then the Superior Louisville Local Government Joint Breakfast at the Sweet Spot, which Elia mentioned, is the name of the restaurant at the Coal Creek Golf Course, and it is truly a sweet spot. So I've been back there twice since Tuesday, or whenever that was when we, and to go in and they go, oh, they know me by name now, so there's a place that knows you by name.
That's not a good thing.
Yeah, not always a good thing. At least it's not a bar. And then the Arbor Day celebration, I attended that too. Thank you. It's always fun to go there. And then the Dr. Cog meeting for last week for the month of April. The presentation I want to mention that was made by CDOT, the Colorado Department of Transportation, was on their Road X project. And CDOT is quite a large vision of how they're going to actually modernize our highways. And they have a goal to actually have connected vehicle technology that actually senses what's happening on the road and talks to your car, because every car now that's manufactured has this ability to listen and talk to the highways, even though you don't know it and you don't have it activated. It's there already since 2013, I think. They said all vehicles have this capability, and it's called DSRC, Dedicated Short Range Communications. And it's in every car that's manufactured today. And then they have V2I, which is Vehicle to Infrastructure capabilities, and they're going to do a connected vehicle V2I project on I-70 up the mountains in the next 2 years. So they'll actually be able to tell you on your smartphone or maybe on your car where to go, like don't go up the mountains today, kind of a thing. And they're going to be implementing that. And their goal is to reduce unimpaired accidents by 80% by using this new connected vehicle technology, which is pretty cool. And I asked if we had that in our DDI, if they already put in the car connected, and they kind of laughed at me. And then, but the ramp metering too that they're going to start doing along like T-Rex and other places is that they're only going to allow a number of cars that can actually go with the flow, because they're not going to allow cars to go in based on one every so many seconds. They're going to say you can only go in as long as the traffic is moving, because they don't want to ever have the traffic. So they're going to be changing that over. I thought it was interesting that the ramp metering is going to start gradually changing over from one every so many seconds, but one based on how much traffic can actually be maintained on the road and still have the traffic moving. So in some cases, you could sit there a long time waiting for that light to turn green, but they're just starting that as well. It's some interesting things that they're trying to do. We'll probably all be in our wheelchairs before they get it going, but it was still fun. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. A couple of local residents to congratulate here. A local Destination Imagination team from middle school named the Steampunks recently took first place at the Boulder Regional Tournament and the third in the state, and they've been invited to global finals. So I wanted to congratulate Marcus Mondro, Ethan Hendricks, Natalie Salt, and Quentin Schmonik for their accomplishments. And Superior athlete Neely Spence Gracie recently completed the Boston Marathon as the highest finishing U.S. woman. Her father was an Olympic marathon runner, but even more impressive, this was her very first marathon, so congratulations to her. Some upcoming event announcements. May 7th, 2 p.m. is the Historical Commission's Historical Walk around Superior, which great education on the coal mines of long ago. So if you've never been on that, I'd encourage you to take advantage of that historical walk. It's led by former residents of the coal mining camps, and they've got some great stories. May 20th, 21st, 22nd is the Superior Morgul Bike Race weekend, always a big event in town, so look forward to that. Some bad news to report on the call-in ride that I've been reporting for the last couple of meetings that was scheduled to start in June. It's now going to be delayed until August due to some issues getting the vehicles ordered by RTD, or RTD getting the vehicles in. So that's going to be August is when that's going to, is when they're now projecting.
Can we get an e-blast out about that?
Yes.
Just some information to residents so that they understand when the vehicle will be instated.
Sure. Yep. And a positive piece of RTD news is the AB bus to the airport is now taking the Northwest Parkway. So it goes from Boulder, stops in Superior, one stop at Flatirons, and then it gets on the Northwest Parkway. So if you've ever taken the AB to the airport, it's now much, much faster than it, and really will not be affected by traffic at all. It's $9. It's the greatest value to the airport, so give that a try. And if you've got an EcoPass, it's just flash the EcoPass and you're on. And finally, the Pledge of Allegiance is noticeably missing from the beginning of our meetings, but it will be coming back. It may have not been here for a long, long time, but we are going to start doing the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of our meetings here at the Superior Board of Trustees, and we're going to start that at the next regular board meeting in May, and I'm going to invite Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts to help us kind of kick that new tradition off. So I'll be reaching out to those folks here shortly. So any other further announcements from the board? Okay, Town Manager?
I don't have anything to report, thanks.
Okay, Town Attorney?
I hate to only report bad news, but last Thursday, the Colorado Court of Appeals came out with a pretty terrible case involving special districts. And as we say, bad facts make bad law. There was a particularly bad special district in Greenwood Village that built the landmark, if you've ever driven by on I-25. And the developer embezzled up to $8 million out of the special district. But in the course of this opinion, the Court of Appeals basically invalidated all special districts in the state. So the public finance community is looking for a very, very quick solution. They're proposing, I believe they were trying to introduce today, proposing legislation to have a temporary fix until the case can be appealed to the Colorado Supreme Court, because it would affect bonds, it would affect, I can't even tell you how much it would affect. So I am working with the group on the proposed legislation. Once that, assuming that goes through, then we'll need to think of some longer term solutions, depending on whether the case gets appealed or not. But I'm just giving you a heads up that we're working behind the scenes on that. So
How often does that happen where you hear of embezzlement in special districts?
it's pretty rare.
So why do they be so hard on statewide special districts because of this isolated incident?
They found that some contracts used to qualify electors for the special districts were what they called them was a sham contract, and in that case they probably were sham contracts, but they used some pretty overbroad language and said that all contracts that look like this are sham contracts. So again, I'm not sure the court knew exactly how far-reaching the case was going to be. I don't know that for a fact, but no one can give an unqualified bond opinion as of last Thursday on any special district bonds. So, so it's a problem, but like I said, the public finance community is all over it, and we're working on it. We're proposing some legislation that I think should have some good support. It'll be a late bill, so that'll be tough, but I think we're going to try that. If that doesn't work, I'm going to think of some other ideas.
So does that impact special districts that have already been in place?
Yes.
Wow.
All of them.
So not just moving forward?
No.
Wow.
There's actually a footnote saying, the court said, we do know that a lot of special districts in Colorado have used this statutory language, but we're unsure why. The statute specifically allows for these contracts, but the court basically said, you can't use these contracts. So we're working on it.
Okay, more to
And it's
come.
very, very poorly timed, because as you know, all special district elections occur next week.
Oh, my gosh.
So that's why they're trying to get a bill in this week, but we'll see.
Okay, more to come on that for sure.
Yes, so that's all the news I have.
Okay, thanks. And Town Clerk?
No, I don't have anything.
All right. Next is public comment on consent or non-agenda items. We do have an agenda item number 13, which many of you may be here to speak about. You're welcome to speak at public comment now or at the agenda item, which will be coming up at in the neighborhood of 7:45. So if you'd like to speak, just maybe give a little hand wave, and I'll kind of motion people up as we can, and we'll work through everyone for public comment. So, Ken.
Good evening. Ken Lish, 1326 South Idalia Court, also the chair of the Open Space Advisory Committee. Two things to speak with you guys about tonight. The first is the Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail. We discussed it at our last OSAC meeting. We heard a passionate and persuasive public comment from 4 individuals. I think most of them are here this evening, discussing their views that the Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail should not cross the Rocky Flats Wildlife Refuge. They will be able to give much better reasoning as to why. But beyond that, OSAC also did their own research and had some spirited discussion about it, as Trustee Dozell discussed earlier. Ultimately, we ended up unanimously passing a recommendation that I'll read as follows. OSAC recommends that the town board elect not to participate in any federal land access program grants unless the Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail is rerouted outside the perimeter of the Rocky Flats National Wildlife Refuge. Further, with the potential adverse health impacts associated with the dangerous elements found at the Rocky Flats site, OSAC believes it is in the town's best interest to work to ensure that the trail does not enter the Rocky Flats National Wildlife Refuge. The second topic I want to discuss with you guys is, as was mentioned earlier, we have 3 spots open for OSAC. This is really an announcement out to the public since there's so much here. Hopefully there will only be 2 spots left. I encourage you guys to please make that appointment later this evening. But as a reminder to the community, OSAC's mission is to acquire, conserve, and provide stewardship of natural open space lands and associated resources to ensure public enjoyment and appropriate recreation, and to conduct relevant educational programs. So please apply and join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see, Ms. Clark.
I'm Teresa Clark. I live at 765 East Wiggins here in Superior. I have a lot of things to discuss with you tonight. I'll try to be brief on each point. The first of which is that we continue to thank you for your support in enforcing the 1998 annexation agreement, which warranted 250 feet of an open space buffer wildlife corridor on the north side of Rock Creek and on the south side of the Superior Town Center, with no road going through it. Last week's meeting, created a firestorm of emails for me, text messages for me, and phone calls for me, resulting in the letters from residents to you, 2 different sets of letters. One set requesting certain stipulations on construction times and construction details of the restoration of the buffer, and the 50 feet north of the buffer in terms of when work can be done, where drainage swales are to be placed, and that covers that. The second set of letters from a different 35 residents requests that you continue to evaluate the location of the road that you allowed the developer to continue to put inside the buffer. So I won't belabor these points. There are 35 letters. I suggest that each of you read every one because not all of them are the same. And they're addressed to everybody from the town attorney on to Trustee Dozell. So that concludes the conversation that I want to have with you about the buffer. The residents also request regarding the 1998 annexation agreement that you provide to us and them a forum different than 5 minutes of public comment to discuss the details of this, because this process of one resident coming forth representing 35 residents and trying to discuss the details of this agreement that you've pretty much let go is not working for the community. Now, the other option that we have is I can bring all 35 residents down and we can talk for our 35 minutes. That's 4 hours of public comment, which we're willing to do. So can you please either provide us another venue so that we can all speak with you personally about this, or we'll just come down and have more late night meetings. There's no other way to discuss this. That concludes my comments on the buffer. Secondly, my comments on agenda item 13. I'm not certain that all of you know about my parents. My father is, before he retired, was the Chief Pharmaceutical and Dental Officer for the United States Public Health Service. Under his tenure with 3M, as the chief resident, he invented the patch by which radiologists wear to indicate the amount of radiation that they've been exposed to, which is fatal or not in terms of long and ugly deaths. My mother is the Freedom of Information Act officer for the CDC, covering Superfund sites. Stated differently, my mom is the woman whose division put the black lines over the information that you don't get to see. So she knows what you don't. And resultingly, between my father's expertise in radiation and my mother's expertise in the federal government and their willingness to perpetuate deceptions that continue to protect them, I was privy to a lot of conversations about nuclear material, nuclear waste disposal sites, including Rocky Flats right here, which conveniently our federal government kind of moved in some Ponzi shell game over to a wildlife division to now say, oh, it's safe, it's safe, it's safe, because wildlife lives there now. Nuclear material has a half-life of 24,000 years. That means in 24,000 years, it is half as potent as it is today. Our community already has an increased cohort of cancers. Adenocarcinoma in situ of the lung and certain types of breast cancer. For us to do anything regarding this site where nuclear material is disposed of, number one, displays a huge ignorance of the science regarding nuclear material, and number two, displays a near criminal negligent act towards the health and safety of our community. This is a bad idea. Let's just leave it alone. Don't put any trails through it. Don't pay for any trails through it. Let's let it rest, because nothing good is going to come out of that. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Ann Fennerty. I live in Boulder, and I would like to thank the previous speaker, because a number of us who are scientists are very concerned about what's happening with the Rocky Flats site. Now, I'm a chemist by training, and I chaired a committee for the League of Women Voters of Boulder on the environmental laws, clean air, clean water, the Superfund site law, and as a result of that, I joined the Citizens Advisory Board for Rocky Flats, and I was a member of that for 2 years. I have never before heard of things such as spray fields, online evaporation ponds, huge online toxic dumps. I will show them on the next slide, and 5,000 drums that were sitting outside. Okay, and I would like to go up one. Okay, so basically, the site that we are talking about is still a Superfund site, is a designation that describes a site that not only is extremely contaminated, but is an extreme danger for people because of its nearness to sites where people live. So right now, the Rocky Flats Refuge is basically in the center, still has a Superfund site, which is still contaminating the water, the air, and the soil. And this is where the plans are the trails to be built. One of the trail entrance would be off Indiana here. go up to the north, and then come up to 128 on the Boulder County open space. It's a very dangerous idea because even if you assume that the surrounding area is clean, which it really isn't, and it hasn't been sampled since 2004, any floods that you have, any winds that you have off this side, which is still managed by the DOE, is a very, very dangerous thing. And as the previous speaker said, plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years, meaning that if you have a pound of it now, in 24,000 years, there'll be half a pound of it left. 1 microgram is potentially lethal. 1 microgram is a millionth of a gram. It's a heavy metal. It's a very, very small quantity. So after the FBI raid, then the Superfund designation has been started. Presently, out of the total 6,400 acres, 1,300 acres in the middle is still managed by the DOE. The rest of it is Fish and Wildlife Service. The plan now is that with the FLAP grant, which is a Transportation Department grant, an entrance would be built off Indiana on the east side of this. And let's see. The next one, let's see, where is my, we don't have that one here. I think the next speaker will show that Atomic Energy Commission studies showed that this east entrance is one of the most contaminated sites on the whole site here. The refuge presently is separated from the Superfund site just with a fence from the rest of it, which means that burrowing animals such as prairie dogs, which go down to 16 feet, can bring all sorts of contaminated soil into the refuge here. This refuge rules allow unlimited contamination under 16 feet. In other words, there are rules for the amount of radiation that can be left to 3 feet, and 1,000 picocuries can be left down to 16 feet, but 16 feet has unlimited radioactive materials. And one of my slides will show the number of sites, the number of structures that have been still left on this site underground. Let's see. I don't have my, okay. So this is that site. And basically, it's called subsurface features, and this is a DOE map. So we start off with, let's see, the 440 site here. This was a beryllium plant. Beryllium is one of the most contaminating materials that's known. Berylliosis is a lung disease that's almost incurable. Because most of these big buildings on the site had underground underground rooms. Like, for instance, this is the 371, a very infamous building that had 3 stories of plutonium fabrication on the side.
Okay, we are at 5 minutes on your presentation. Were you going to transition to others?
Okay. Now, I would like to just finish by saying that I would like, basically, our reason for being here is to ask you to make sure that any road that is being built will be built across, not across, but on Indiana to 128, and not to cross this very contaminated site. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening. My name is John Lipsky, Longmont, Colorado. Greetings to the honorable mayors and trustees of the town of Superior, staff, and visitors. The Rocky Mountain Greenway should proceed around the Rocky Flats Refuge, not through it. And please post this document. To introduce myself, I retired from the FBI. I was the lead FBI agent during the criminal investigation at Rocky Flats from 1987 to 1992. I was also the affiant for the 2 search warrants during the June 1989 search. And in 2005, I was recognized by a federal judge as a subject matter expert on Rocky Flats operations during the Maryland Cook or adjacent property lawsuit. This is the map that Fish and Wildlife distributed on April 4th. And the one change is what I did in red, and that is that it's a Superfund site in the middle. The refuge goes around, completely around the refuge or the Superfund site. And the proposed trails are in the northeastern area up to the north side. If you'll notice that I also added Town of Superior in the upper right-hand corner, just to give you a proximity of how close you all are near this place. The government's remedy at Rocky Flats was to maintain contamination. There are no limits 6 feet or below. As Ann just showed you, there's building foundations and pits and trenches that have been left behind. I also want to make a point, and I don't want to duplicate things, but Rocky Flats radionuclides migrate, and they know no boundaries. This is the Cray-Hardy map that Ann was talking about, and Professor Michael Ketter at Metro State University had converted the becquerels on the brown area, and that brown area is basically where this area of the proposed trails will begin, and that equates to 50,000 picocuries per gram per square meter. The standard for the refuge was 50 picocuries per gram. So it's quite a big, huge difference. And then it goes up through here. This map was a Atomic Energy Commission map, and it was to dispute Dr. Edward Martell's findings in 1970. The other thing is, during the criminal investigation, Rockwell did plead guilty, and they pled guilty to disposing of their plant effluent, which was radioactive, hazardous waste, toxic, and commercial waste, into the area of Walnut Creek. And they also spray irrigated around Walnut Creek, and that you can see the color code on that. It's the maximum, again, is on the key up here. Professor Harvey Nichols, he's a professor emeritus in biology at CU. He conducted a study in 1975 and 1976 for DOE. He took samples of snow particles during the winter, and he found that the largest plutonium particles were greater than 0.5 microns on the east gate. That's where the proposed trail is at, or will be. And east of Indiana, the smallest particles were found down to 0.05 microns. The northwest area had the highest numbers collected, and the southeast area had the lowest numbers collected. The point being is that he measured the number of particles on the sampling, and he found that there were greater than 600 million fatal doses from that winter. This is the plume map, another DOE map showing what's underground as far as the groundwater and what direction it's going. As you can see, it recharges the surface water. DOE doesn't like to talk about this. They were sued over it, but in the 70s and up till 85, they spray irrigated their plant effluent. That was radioactive hazardous waste, but it wasn't radioactive hazardous waste until 1984 because the environmental laws didn't kick into effect. I just want to show you the proximity to this and Rock Creek. So once DOE and Rockwell had to change their spray irrigation practices, they went to the east side. And this is a Rockwell picture, overflight picture, showing the burial sites of the 903 pad, the mound area, and the east trenches. And they put this map together to show the EPA that they would not spray irrigate over it. They pled guilty in 1992 to spray irrigating not only over these burial sites, but contamination that went down to Woman Creek and also to Walnut Creek. Yes, sir.
We're at 5 minutes for your comments. If you could maybe wrap up and transition to another. Okay, great.
The legacy and distrust of Rocky Flats operations and the refuge has not changed. Your town has experienced firsthand the residual and persistent effects that Rocky Flats contamination poses. And probably to finish it up really quick, if you vote for this flap grant, you're telling your citizens that it's safe. And it's not. And I thank you very much.
Hold on one second. Let's go to Ms. Forshee next.
And I'd like to make a point that on item 13, we also have more public comment that can be utilized during that time. So if you did not get to speak or did not get to make a point that you want to make, you can do that as well then.
Yes.
Gladys Forshee, 404 South 3rd Avenue. I have two things. As far as Rocky Flats is concerned, we had a resident that lived here for many years, Miriam Pitstrick. She developed breast cancer. There was never any word you could say to that lady that she did not get her breast cancer from the Rocky Flats water because we were still on the wells at that time. So I don't think that trail should go through. I grew up with Rocky Flats being in process, and it was a site to stay away from at that time. What I really come for I know you all don't pay any attention this time of year when Coal Creek starts running, but this has been part of my life for several years. There's an issue with the bridge at 2nd Avenue and Coal Creek. There is a fence across that creek. The water has come up. Debris is starting to collect. I don't care if it's just weeds, but under Colorado law, you cannot have a fence across a waterway. Every waterway in the state of Colorado is to be open. That fence was put in by that contractor under one of our residents' direction, and that's wrong. That fence needs to be taken out. Boulder County is now on alert for another flood because of all the moisture that we've had and what is more projected. That fence needs to be removed off of Coal Creek at 2nd Avenue Bridge now, because you're lucky that you're not Boulder County, because I'm going to start chewing this week because they haven't done their work on Coal Creek above us here in Superior. And guess who gets flooded when their trail floods? 2 guesses, and a second don't count. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Gail Biggs, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk before this council. I'm a meteorologist by profession, and I just want to say that I also have many concerns about Rocky Flats. The health department conducted a study about 2.5 decades ago that found that the most dangerous emissions from Rocky Flats were the airborne emissions. These are the most dangerous. Yet neither CDPHE or Colorado Health Department or EPA have any standards to cover this fact that these were the things they found the most dangerous. Plutonium-239 is my major concern, although there are other dangerous chemicals out there. But when plutonium-239 is breathed into the body, it stays in your body for the rest of your life. It is not expelled out through your body. And what it does, it tends to concentrate in the lung, liver, brain, bones, and reproductive system of the person who has inhaled it. And with a half-life of 24,110 years, it's longer than you're going to exist. And it continuously emits alpha particles into the body, and eventually it will cause cancer and other ailments. I have seen estimates where they've been talking earlier that a tablespoon of plutonium evenly spread over Denver could eventually kill every citizen of Denver. That's how bad it is. It's also one of the most toxic metals known. Governor Romer commissioned a scientific panel back in the late 1980s, and I was chairman of the air committee of that panel. First meeting, he said to us, I'm hearing different stories, how bad it is out there, and from DOE and the management, how great it is, it's peaches and cream, why are you worried? So he asked us to go out there and give him the straight answer. We did. Our report was never published. We heard 2 reports. One, it ran out of money. The other one, DOE killed it. So I don't know which one it is. But when we were out there talking to the workers were very candid with us. And they said that the management out there was so bad that they had no place to throw their trash, because radioactive trash, because the trash cans were never dumped, never cleaned. So they would go out onto the ground and dump it on the ground. And if it wasn't, it was a larger amount, and they started feeling guilty about it, they'd bury it in the ground out there. So that's how they got rid of their plutonium out there. And the workers estimated to me that from 60 to 90% of the plutonium coming off that site was from the ground and the airborne emissions. And so anyway, I just wanted to also point out, in your handouts, if you have them in front of you, when we were out there, and I asked to see, since I was interested in the air, the exhaust duct out of Building 771, which was mentioned earlier, was a really bad one out there. And I saw the pitot tube, and I said to the worker, I said, gee, when was the last time that was calibrated? It's never been calibrated since it was put in 1951. I looked at the radiological monitors, and it turns out that the way the ducting was designed, that the airflow created an eddy to where the airflow was flowing backwards over the monitoring ducts. They knew that, management would do nothing about it, and so that's the way it was. So they had no idea what was coming off that facility in terms of, because it takes two things. It takes the amount of air going out of that duct and the amount of radioactivity in the air to calculate what's going out. They had neither one of those numbers. The next is a sheet prepared by Rocky Flats worker on the condition of that 771 main duct. And in 1970, they had to put in a second duct because the first one got so bad that they couldn't get it maintained. And if you read the comments over there, it talks about the acid leaking, deteriorating the floors and the ceilings, and on and on and on. They rated this physical condition as poor across all items, and technological status as inadequate all the way across. I just want to read one comment to you. For 31 years, now this was written by the Rocky Flats employee in 1982. For 31 years, which would be back to the beginning, the main exhaust flue has been the sewage dump station for production. Because they had no place to dump it, they brought it up, they dumped it in that, and they blew it out the stack. That was the way they did it.
We're at 5
I've only 5 minutes?
Yep.
Okay. Well then, really very quick, go fast. This is the monitoring station for the high vol sampler, which is a regulatory monitor. This is the size of the particles coming out of the stack. This is the size of coming off the ground. And so when they say it's meeting all our standards, it is, because the monitors aren't doing it. The only other thing that I would like to talk about is the fact that DOE has been measuring the runoff off from Rocky Flats for 10 years. Well, actually, it's for 15. And this is a listing of the runoff of plutonium. And many of them are above standards. And any time they're above 0, it means plutonium is coming off that plant. And the rainfall we had.
We appreciate
okay.
it. We need to move on.
Just one other quick thing. These are all my letters to EPA, and every one of them says, no, we're meeting standards, go away, leave us alone. So I've been very persistent.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Excuse me. My name is Ted Ziegler, and this is a pleasure to be here again tonight. I've had 2 other meetings with you folks that thank you for. I have a due to the 5 minutes, I have a full transcript that you can share later, review it as I go along here. And for those that don't know me, I was a safety representative for 13 years at the plant site for Local 8031 Union. And throughout those years, I had addressed the same issues on the plant site regarding the contamination and the health issues that not only affected the employees but the communities. In this transcript, had two very unusual pictures that I was fortunate enough to get access to while on the plant site. And one of them is an example of the same concept that exists today with our legislators, Colorado Department of Health, the EPA, and Department of Energy, that it's safe out at the Rocky Flats. It is not. And these pictures illustrate that the same safe comments being made today reflect what is said in the past. A sub-sandwich picture in a beryllium machine shop that I personally worked in when I hired in as a journeyman machinist, and then went into as the safety committee very shortly after. The sub-sandwich was shipped on plant site for a Christmas party. The tree came in plant site, all of the ornaments, the illustration of all the illegal, you might call illegal things that are in the picture, illustrate that it was not in the best interest of the employee's health. Clothing that was worn, beards, you couldn't wear a respirator. 2 years after I hired in, after this picture was taken, you didn't have to wear a respirator, and for a few years later, it wasn't the mandatory rule that you wore a respirator. Now, the last picture in that illustrates that this continued during the cleanup of the plant site, which is a good illustration that there was no conduct of operation at the plant site that was mandatory, that you only did the job one way. These three individuals in that picture with a back sheet have an industrial hygiene report on that picture that illustrates they were not wearing protective clothing and they were in a room cleaning up beryllium contamination in that room. The Colorado Department of Health, I might mention his name, he isn't here, I don't like to mention a person's name, but he has illustrated to us in presentations through the Stewardship Council that his comparison to plutonium, for example, is no more hazardous than cigarette smoking, asphalt paving, cleaning fluid, dry cleaning fluid, and shelf items on the shelves that you can purchase off your shelf items in your neighborhood. But I am in the same opinion here. We do not want access to the plant site, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm Michelle Gabriloff Parrish. I live at 2855 Rock Creek Circle in Superior, and just want to speak from a community perspective and have a lot I want to say. So I'm seeing that that's a trend, so I'll try to keep it brief. Maybe one of you can give me a little signal when I'm like halfway through so I can make sure.
Right here. You see the light go.
Oh, brilliant. You've dealt with this before.
Just a few times.
So I moved here 8 years ago, really 8.5 now, with my husband and 3 children. And actually, before I even begin that, I just want to say that it's amazing the amount of wisdom and experience and knowledge that we have in this community, and I run into that again and again. And hope that we can keep that and retain that memory, because it seems like some of this is easy to forget, and I can imagine in a couple generations nobody knowing that this site has been so contentious. So I moved here 8.5 years ago with my husband and 3 children, and I noticed on the drive down from Summit County that there were signs for Rocky Flats. And I grew up in Colorado, so I was like, isn't there something wrong with that site? And maybe we don't want to live this close to it. But I looked at the water and saw that the water didn't come this way very much, and thought that we were safe because of that, and didn't realize that, like some of these folks have said, respirable plutonium was the risk. I also figured that if it was not safe, our neighborhood wouldn't be here, and that somebody would have said something or not allowed this to happen. So I now look at this proposal, and I look at Rocky Flats as a property with this core that's still a Superfund site. And I just wonder, how do we know how close is okay to be? And also, I've been learning a little bit enough about it to see that how close you can be to it has changed. Not necessarily because the science has changed, but more because the pressure in this region that's beautiful, where you can't taste any of these toxins and you can't smell any of them, the pressure to develop in this area has increased, not that it's necessarily gotten safer. So I looked up on the Department of Labor website, and you can look this up, that it's not just plutonium and uranium and beryllium that's out there. There's over 1,000 carcinogens that we know are buried at the site. And especially after the 2013 floods, I thought, well, how do we know that those things will stay in that place? I wonder if other folks who live here have had problems with settling in their homes. I don't know if other folks have had that. My whole neighborhood, at least on the Rock Creek side, we've had huge issues with settling. And those are in houses that have been built for, and there's been designs for extremes. There's been designs for what happens during a flood. There's been designs for these things. And we've still had problems. And now we're talking about a site that needs to stay preserved safe for thousands of years. How can we guarantee that if we can't even make sure that our foundations stay stable, that plutonium, uranium, beryllium, and 1,000 other carcinogens will stay in place where we hope they would? I looked at the site during the 2013 floods and really was shocked, like everybody was, at how much material was shifted during that flooding. I mean, even just right here, right outside this, the river was, I mean, it was crazy. It was boulders moving, huge logs moving. And here we are talking about tiny little particles that could harm us, harm our children. I put a little informal poll out on Facebook before coming here. You guys can look at it on the 0027 site or group. And just said, hey, if we had $100,000 to spend on something, would you want it to be to connect our community with Rocky Flats? And there was some contention on there, but the majority of folks were saying no, or what is the controversy, and can you give us more information, which I think might be a good stance for this council to take, is we don't really have enough information to say that not only should we connect our community to this site, but that we should actually put down our own money to connect to this site. I know that my family loves to go to Waneka Lake. We love to go to El Dorado Canyon. There's so many beautiful places here that we'd love to be connected to and have easier access to. But Rocky Flats doesn't make the list for us. So the other thing that I want to say is just that I had to...
Heads up, you're
I thought I was going to get a little warning light. I didn't see it.
That's the yellow light.
All right, I didn't see. Well, I'll just leave with that. In doing research about this site, I actually expected to become more and more comfortable with the situation. But the more research that I do, the more concerned I actually become. And so I hope that you all will take some time to really look at this and say, does our community need to put money towards connecting to a site that has such an intense legacy of contention versus so many other beautiful places in our community, and even other issues? One of the people on Facebook said we should put the $100,000 towards some smart Google optic grid thing. I don't even know what it is, but it does beg the question, if we have these funds, how do we really want to use them, and what's really the vision for our community? Not just what are we being offered and will we swallow it or not. Thank you.
Additional public comment.
Good evening. My name is Alicia Casey, and I am from Aurora, Colorado. Thank you for having public comment this evening. I am also speaking about issue 13. I represent a group called the Rocky Flats Downwinders. And since organizing last year, we have collected over 500 names of former residents who are ill and have lost loved ones, and others that have lifelong health issues from living downwind and downstream from Rocky Flats. And in response to this high rate of reported illnesses, the Downwinders have reached out to local universities, including Metropolitan State University and CU, as well as Front Range Community College, and are now working with them to conduct a health and illness survey. This health survey has been officially approved by the university internal review board and will go live and will be available to the public in May of 2016. We are documenting who's sick and how sick they are and in this area. And what's really important, because I don't want to repeat everything that's been said because it's so great, but really think about, is there such a thing as a safe side of the fence? We're talking about particles that are so small that you can just inhale them driving down Indiana Street because they're doing culvert repair that they did last year. I don't know if you knew that. The dog park that is Westminster Hills Open Space has insane cancer rates in the animals that recreate there. The veterinaries in the area are well aware, and we had one veterinary that came out and spoke. He was so concerned. He had moved to California. He didn't want to move back because he knew the cancer rates in the animals were double, triple what he would see in the animals in California. And these are dogs that are getting cancer in their paws from recreating through the dirt. And we want to put trails on that? How is that responsible land management? That's insanity. So I ask, please, take all of these comments, do your research. Do not allow this trail to be on this land. Thank you.
Okay, additional public comment? We will have an additional opportunity for public comment for anyone who's not had a chance to speak when we get to item 13, if you'd like to. Okay, seeing no additional public comment, we're going to move on to the item number 11, the consent agenda. Have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Trustee Gregoris, second by Mayor Pro Tem Williams. All those in favor of the consent agenda? Okay, passes unanimous. Thank you. Next is item number 12, adoption of a resolution making an appointment to the Open Space Advisory Committee. We had an interview earlier.
Thank you, Mayor. So our code, section 21240 of the Superior Municipal Code, addresses membership of town advisory committees, including appointments of members. Like I said, there's 3 vacancies on the Open Space Advisory Committee currently. We have posted these vacancies through various town media over recent months. We have one candidate who has been interviewed by the board tonight, and we have scheduled for the board's consideration of this individual's appointment.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Pennington?
I would like to make a motion, Town of Superior Resolution Number R. 28, Series 2016, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior making an appointment to the Open Space Advisory Committee. It would involve Ryan Welsh, and the term would expire in June of 2017, although you are then eligible for 2 more 3-year terms, so 6 plus this one.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, we have motion by motion by Trustee Pennington and second by Mayor Pro Tem Williams. All those in favor? Or do we need to do a roll call vote or something? Okay. All those in favor? Okay, passes unanimous. Congratulations and thank you for applying. All right. Next is item number 13, adoption of a resolution supporting the Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail Project.
Thank you, Mayor. As we've heard a number of public comments tonight, this item is with regard to support of a grant application for the Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail Project. The town has been approached by the City of Boulder and Boulder County to support this grant application. The Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail Project is a trail that would be built. Some aspects have already been built from Rocky Mountain National Park to Rocky Mountain Arsenal to the southeast. So it's a large trail project. The grant application is proposed for 2 connection points for the trail, one on Indiana and one on Highway 128. Participants in the grant application, which is being submitted by Jefferson County, includes Jefferson County, cities of Arvada, Westminster, City and County of Broomfield, potentially City of Boulder and Boulder County, and potentially the Town of Superior. The access point on Highway 128 would have connections to Colton Trail eventually, and would, as you've seen on some of the maps, connect through the Rocky Flats Wildlife Refuge. The grant application calls for a 17% match of any participating jurisdictions. The town's portion of that grant application would be $122,000 and just $780 approximately, depending on how the project costs bear out. You've heard the Open Space Committee recommendation. ProStack had a similar recommendation to OSAC's. And Megan Davis was kind enough to attend the meeting tonight. She's from the Boulder County Commissioner's Office, in case you have any questions for her. I think that was it. So if you have any questions for me or for...
I had one clarification. I heard a comment earlier tonight that this was somehow connecting Superior to this trail system, and my understanding is that no portion of this trail would go through Superior at all.
No, yes, that's correct. Okay. It would be in Boulder County or City Boulder open space to the north. Yep.
Okay, Trustee Brewers.
Yeah, I know other trustees will have a lot more comments to make, so I wanted to go first and get out of the way, but I don't foresee, under no circumstances will I vote for this. Not for $122,000, not for 122 cents. This is not something that I could support in any way, shape, or form. So I just want to be up there, up front, and then leave the forum for Trustee Pennington or whoever wants to go next, or Trustee Dizelle. But and thank you for all your comments. I had made up my mind before y'all came here, but I appreciate the validation, I guess, from you. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Dizelle.
I have some issues with how we actually got this resolution and the way it's written, which I will not vote for either, for multiple reasons. But first of all, the resolution says that there's a connection on Indiana that we're being asked to participate in. That's not true. Town of Superior is not participating in that or being asked to. We're being asked to participate in the 2 underpasses that go under 128.
That's correct.
One of them is $3.5 million if the FLAP grant was successful to build a wilderness trail, a wildlife trail to get the Preble's jumping mouse and the elk and the foxes and coyotes under there. And $770,000 is to build a pedestrian underpass. So I'm sitting here, the first question is, why would Superior actually participate in funding a grant that doesn't connect to any of our trails and spends $3.5 million to build an underpass for wildlife to get out of Rocky Flats and over into the Boulder County wildlife or open space? And then the other thing is that it's $2.5 million or $2.2 million to build the overpass over Indiana, which we're not being asked to participate in.
We are not.
So the resolution is incorrect in that respect. And also, it says that Town of Superior's commitment to provide safe, multimodal transportation options for residents and visitors align directly with the efforts of this grant and to provide access to Rocky Flats National Wildlife Refuge along Indiana Avenue while connecting the new facilities to existing and planned transportation infrastructure. So that's incorrect too. Now that's probably what Jefferson County would be doing as a resolution. But first of all, I don't agree that we're providing safe, and our responsibility to provide safety to our residents aligns directly with the efforts to provide access to Rocky Flats National Wildlife. So I have a problem with this resolution, even if we were going to go forward with something like this. And I also have a problem with a resolution that brought before this board when two of our committees have said no. Their recommendations are no, and it looks like staff is recommending it in this resolution. So I have
the request is for support of the grant application.
Yeah, but that's what they're saying.
So that's
They're
what the
not-
consideration
they're
of the
not-
agenda item is. So
Right,
if you need a supporting resolution if the board wished to make that decision tonight. That's all the resolution
But this
represents.
resolution doesn't say that. It says that we're supporting in Indiana, which there's some incorrect
Right,
statements there.
I agree.
So what I'm saying is that after all of this time and effort that committees have gone through, then for us to get a resolution like this that is not correct and accurate and also refers to not only just participating in this FLAP grant, this Federal Land Access Program grant, that creates underpasses to Boulder County open space connecting to Rocky Flats. There's a lot of issues on multiple levels, but the first one is basically what Elias, Trustee Gregoris was saying. The first question is, does Superior think it's in our best interest to participate in a $122,000 match for something that doesn't connect to any of our trails, and also builds a $4.5 or $4.3 million underpasses that connect to Rocky Flats? And if we answer no to that, we're done. If we answer yes to that, then we go back and have a further conversation. Does it meet the safe alignment of our goals with our residents and our visitors? So there's just so many things that are wrong with this resolution. But the real one is that I don't think it's in the best interest to spend the money for this application. And I still am not clear on who's presenting the application. Is it Jefferson County or is it Boulder?
It's Jefferson County.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Williams.
We spent 3, 4, maybe even 5 years it was, in a lawsuit against U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to prevent the toll road from going through Rocky Flats. And to make that an absolute waste and vote for this would be a huge travesty. It makes no sense. That's not what we stood for then, and that would not be what we would stand for now. And it is the same board. The other thing is, the big question is, do you believe that the federal government was able to clean Rocky Flats to a safe level for the public access? Probably not. I mean, it's probably highly unlikely, and unless we had a giant sifter that could sift every little particle, but I don't think that has been invented yet. So I look at this and I think constructing a public trail through a Superfund site is not good public policy today or ever. And I see no reason to spend public money that facilitates public health and safety hazards to our residents or to anyone in the whole area. So this is a non-starter for me.
Back in 2010 is when this board, or the previous board, really started working on looking at Rocky Flats and the potential Jefferson Parkway. And since that time, Department of Energy, U.S. Fish and Wildlife has really kind of pushed us around and pushed some of the other communities around that were opposed to this. And an example of this is in our packet, just one line, that these projects will move forward regardless of the outcome of local deliberations on the flat application. They're going to do this, put that trail through there regardless of what we do, regardless of whether we want to support the bridge or the underpass or not. They're going to move forward and do that, and that's the way this has been the entire time. Whenever there's a debate like this, there's always going to be two sides. We know that where the Department of Energy sits and Fish and Wildlife sits. Then there's the opposing side that says, why would you put this stuff out there? Why would you let anybody go out there? Those debates are never going to stop. They're always going to be around. But there are certain things that we won't debate. We all agree on. There's water sources, there's drinking water sources that were contaminated because of what happened out on that site. There's radioactive material still buried out there. We all agree on that. It's out there. This is a Superfund site, for God's sakes. Why would we ever want to put a trail through there where our kids, our grandparents, or anybody else is going to go walking out there? The other side's going to say, well, it's perfectly safe. Well, the other side's going to say, no, it's not. But why even take that chance? There's no way I could support this. I'm not even know if I support having the trail go around it, because there's still winds. That's another fact we all know. There's heavy winds. So how do we know? Are we going to test the trail every month to make sure that it's safe? We can't do that. We can't possibly do that. This board had discussions 2 or 3 years ago about taking a trail up McCaslin to 128 that could potentially connect to a trail towards Rocky Flats. And the board at the time was adamantly opposed to that, a trail in our town. We didn't want that trail to go through because we knew that that would be an admission of support for trails through Rocky Flats. And we have always opposed that. So there's absolutely no way that I would ever support this, and I would encourage the rest of the board to do the same.
Well, I'll just throw out something of a disagreeing opinion, but not a disagreement with the conclusion I think we're heading to. I did work at Rocky Flats. I didn't work at Rocky Flats during the time when these gentlemen worked there and encountered primarily the unsafe conditions, and I respect the opinions. I respect the opinions of the people, all of the people that have spoken. I fall back on my belief that the remedy that was agreed upon by all the local governments here on the cleanup of the site was a good remedy. I worked on the site during the remedy. I'm not a scientist. I was a contracts attorney, so I can't debate the science of this. But I do know the people that were making decisions. I knew our environmental counsel at the time, and I worked for the contractor, Kaiser Hill. So I think the cleanup was good, and individuals have to decide whether it's safe or not to go on. I've de facto made that decision by going there to work, and I go back every year to visit the site. Whether I bring my grandchildren there to walk a trail, I don't know. My view on this connection, well, whether or not the Fish and Wildlife Service should open the refuge, which was part of what all of the local governments agreed to, is that we would have a refuge surrounding the central unit. Whether that should be open to the public, that was done after Fish and Wildlife studies and what they considered the equivalent of a NEPA study, which we didn't agree with. That's what they're saying they're going ahead and doing, regardless of what we think. So, be that as it may, my view on this, when we were approached by it, and I think I shared this opinion with the board, is number one, let's decide if we want to do this or not. Number two, do we have the money to support it? If we do want to do it. And number three, what kind of money? And I'm picking up pretty much the strong opinion that we don't want to do it. And I was really looking for OSAC and PROSTAC view of, does this fit in any way to our trail plans? And that's, the resounding is no, so I'm not going to support this matter for all of those reasons. That's all I can say.
Okay.
Go ahead, Alan.
Okay. So the Yeah, the resolution before us is asking if we support this idea of a grant application. And generally, I like the idea of supporting our neighbors when they want to collectively do something. I mean, that's how we get things done regionally. However, that's headed down the path of will you support us and then will you give us money? And my biggest hang-up with this is I'm not seeing the connection of value to our residents to the money that we would potentially spend on this. So, from that point, and then there's many other questions that have all been raised here tonight. So I can't support it, and especially when our, so many of our people that we trust on our open space and parks and recreation open space committees, when they kind of collectively and resoundingly give an opinion, that's, we should certainly listen to that, and I'm listening to that. So I'm not going to be in support of it either. So, Trustee Pennington, then I think we should.
I may go more than 5 minutes, so I don't want to see that.
I think we've got a direction here.
Oh, no, but I've got to talk here a minute.
Okay.
I want to say I'm very proud to serve on this board with you guys. We are the first border council of the 7 that's had the courage to make a decision on this. Every other border council has deferred a vote, waiting for the other one to take the leadership role on this. And I hope every other border council is watching, and I hope the media is taking note, and Megan, I hope Boulder County is taking note. I'm very proud of the strong signal we're sending that no way, no how, and I'm going to put words in some people's mouths, that it goes way beyond the fact it doesn't connect. It goes to the concern, will we send our residents, will every one of these communities send its residents in harm's way, in potential harm's way, with their yes vote? Because if you vote yes, John Lipsky's exactly right. If you vote yes, and you're an elected official, the residents you serve have every right to interpret that as meaning it's safe for them to go out on. So I really caution every elected official out there in those 6 other communities to take it very seriously before they cast that yes vote. And I also want to alert this board about 2 more challenges. One, this is just the starting blocks for our community. Shortly down the road, as you read in that audacious memo that was attached to the packet, Fish and Wildlife Service intends to build a visitor center out there. It's been said this visitor center is going to be 10,000 square feet. Imagine the dust that will go up in the air as that is excavated. And they hope to, if I'm quoting David Lucas correctly, he drew a parallel between the 10,000 visitors that the Rocky Mountain Arsenal has on a good weekend, and was hoping that we would have 10,000 visitors out here. Now, I don't know how safe the Arsenal is, and I don't know how safe Two Ponds is, but I have done 6 years of research on this ever since, as Chris said, in 2010 we were faced with the Jefferson Parkway. I've read every publicly available book and recommend Full Body Burden by Kristen Iverson as the most recent accumulation of all the data. And so I've tried to educate myself. I have told other communities when I've appeared in front of them, and intend to tell them when I appear in front of them down the road, this is not the Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail. This is the Rocky Mountain Superfund Trail. It connects the Superfund side of the Arsenal to the Superfund side of Two Ponds to the Superfund site of Rocky Flats. So let's call it what it is. So when those guests come off the airplane, they don't think they're going out to some wonderful wildlife refuge, etc. Let's call these things what they are. Former Rocky Flats, former nuclear weapons facility, not National Wildlife Refuge. So we don't lead people into danger. The last thing I want to say, there's a movement right now going on by City of Boulder and Boulder County to float this idea, can we retest the site, particularly along the trail, to see if there's any contamination. I have talked directly to some of those council members. It's full of folly for exactly what many speakers here have said tonight. Even if I measure that trail right now and it says 0 contamination, the second the wind blows, the second it rains, the second that groundhog that can go down 16 feet when this deadly stuff is buried under 6 feet and makes that little mound of fine dust, and that blows, that same test the next day might turn out negative. So I really encourage other communities to take that into account, and I would encourage this community, our board, to agree to send, if you will, a delegation, and heaven knows I want to be on that, to call a meeting with Boulder County and City of Boulder. City of Boulder votes on this May 3rd. Boulder County votes on it either May 5th or May 10th. And then then Westminster and Broomfield and even Jeffco are setting their dates to come after, so they see how those communities are voting. So I would like to ask that we put together a group, maybe 3 of us, who actually call a meeting with the Boulder County Commissioners and call a meeting with the council members and mayor of Boulder to ask them to support us on this. You'll remember back in 2010, it was Boulder and Boulder County who sold us down the river on the Jefferson Parkway because they wanted Section 16. And they exchanged that for their vote in favor of the Jefferson Parkway despite our protests. Let's not make sure that happens again. Let's get out in front of this. Let's meet with them and do our damnedest to try to get them to see our point. We are, after all, the southernmost sister of these entities, the one that's right across the highway from Rocky Flats. I would hope they would respect our judgment. I don't need to tell you how I'm going to vote, do I? Thank you.
Right. We will offer an opportunity for public comment. If you have commented before, we'd like to give opportunity to people who have not had public comment. So we'll start here with Ms. Dunham.
Hi, Patricia Dunham, 3574, Huron Peak. I'm also the vice chair of OSAC. So I just want to reiterate again that OSAC doesn't recommend the flap. But speaking as a citizen and not as a vice chair, I'm concerned when I hear you say that, they're like, we're going ahead anyways. Tough luck, those of you who don't want to support the flap. So I would ask that our board also not vote for the flap, but also work towards saying we don't want anything disturbed at that site. It's not just like, oh, we're going to have to throw our hands up and say, well, they're putting in a visitor center, they're going to build out these things. I think we do have to be proactive and say we do not see the data yet that this is safe. Give us the data if you think it is. Thank you.
Chase. Sir.
I'm sorry, was it me?
No, I'm sorry. I had motioned to him to come in.
You're next. I apologize.
That's fine. So I'm Chase Griffith. I'm one of the local residents. I live off of North Torreys Peak. I happen to be a board-certified urologist. Do surgery. I see these patients. I'm also a chemical engineer by background, so I do have ability to kind of interpret a lot of this kind of data and stuff that comes across. And as Sandy says, I've been looking at stuff for 6 years because when we moved here, I remember signing this brief little thing that said, we're in close position to where Rocky Flats is, and real estate agents, it's safe, don't worry, won't be disturbed, just sign it. We signed it, and then over the next couple of years, I got to learning a little bit more of it. Basically, I guess really an eye-opener for me was seeing patients. I usually treat bladder cancer, kidney cancer, prostate cancer, things along those lines, which are often carcinogens, these chemicals and things, which many were buried, at Rocky Flats, and then occasionally radiation. I was also a chemical casualty radiation doc in the Army. I taught some of their courses. So just looking at that, I mean, you see these patients that come through, they got upwards of 5 and 6 tumors sometimes. When you get to talking to them, they reiterate all these stories that you're hearing. You know, I basically carried radiation, dumped it in a hole, buried tons of barrels out on the grounds. I mean, there's, you know, really something to all those stories that you hear. And then when you ask them, they're like, well, what about your friends? Where are your friends? Well, they're either got cancer or they're dead like me, Doc. And you get to talking to their families, and you see several of these patients over time, and there really is something to this. I think the place is still contaminated. How much? I don't think we know. There's not really been independent studies done to really tell what happened there. But the airborne plutonium-239, that's, I mean, you inhale that, you get 2 or 3 molecules in you, you probably will get cancer at some point. Yeah, it'll be 30 years down the road, but it probably will be something fairly significant. So that's kind of all I have.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Next. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. I'm Larry Hankins. I'm a former employee at Rocky Flats with over 32 years. I was a radiological control technician. I worked in 71 building for 12 years as a chem op, then as a radiation tech, then I worked out in the buffer zone as a radiation tech. Sir, you did not have hands-on or work out in the area.
That's, I said that.
It was hell. I saw dumping that I couldn't believe. I would go out and see 30 drums of chemicals and oil sitting out in the field over on the northeast side of the plant, and come out 2 or 3 days later and they'd be empty, and the waste techs out there would be laughing. We just dumped them. We did what we were told. This went on so much at Rocky Flats, we couldn't count the number of times. I've had cancer. I've got severe peripheral neuropathy and many other problems diagnosed by my physicians as caused by Rocky Flats. They waited 45 years to tell me that I had a massive high internal radiation dose. I was in the Post here several months ago on the front page. They waited 45 years. They lied to me for 45 years. I should have been removed from the hot area and allowed to go to the cold side forever. Was I given that opportunity? No, because I was expendable. It was okay. You made a wise decision tonight. I'm proof of that. I'm tired of burying my friends. People who spent less time than me doing radiation work, some a little bit more. Folks, that's not a nice place. It won't be. When the plutonium decays to americium-241, it'll decay to neptunium, which is only good for 250,000 years. Why did DOE wait all these years to tell us that we had deuterium, neptunium, and polonium-210 on the plant site? We just found out about it several months ago. Why was that kept a secret when at Hanford it was used in everyday operations? You made a wise decision tonight. Let's hope the rest of the communities can see the truth in Rocky Flats. It's all about money. That's the bottom line. It's about somebody's pocketbook making a few extra bucks on the side so that they can sell some land out of Rocky Flats. Big mistake. Trust me, I'm proof of it. Thank you.
Thank you, John Lipsky again. Mr. Mayor, I'll make this really quick, if I can find my way in there. Thank you. 4 quick points. Rock Creek headwaters is in the refuge. And if you remember earlier, I pointed out where the West Sprayfield was. Well, if you compare this Rock Creek, that's 2.2 miles. It's a drainage from Coal Creek, and this thing goes under 128, and it keeps on going. Now, Broomfield and Westminster had their water tainted. Broomfield doesn't use Great Western Reservoir for drinking water anymore. But this is a 1995-1996 data sheet for Rock Creek, and it has been tested for americium, uranium, plutonium, and it was all there. So this is the area that's where the visitor center is going to be constructed, and do you really want that to happen? As far as the cleanup, it was not a good cleanup. It was a terrible cleanup. The Oak Ridge Institute of Science and Education criticized DOE and Kaiser Hill for 2 things. Kaiser Hill was using uncalibrated equipment and missing hot spots over the 903 pad. DOE is supposed to use a specialized technique for sampling. So when Boulder City and Boulder County talk about sampling, it didn't work then. What makes you think it's going to work now? And then this is a map from a 1999 CDPHE buffer zone contamination review. There were 110 areas that CDPHE asked the Department of Energy to resolve, basically. And this map shows the areas of interest, and there's 25 that DOE neglected to respond to. So how is this a good cleanup when all of these areas, and over here by the Rock Creek area, this is a tributary to Walnut Creek, which is another part of the proposed trails. How does this make us feel good? And then the last thing is Fish and Wildlife throws around 4 big letters, NEPA, NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. Well, during the NEPA CCP, or Comprehensive, whatever it stands for, they have to call it something else, but it's a conservation program. But it's an environmental impact study. 81% of the people that responded to that particular document were against any access at Rocky Flats. And NEPA has no meaning other than we can sue them for it, because Fish and Wildlife disregarded the 81%, and now they're pursuing allowing access out at the Rocky Flats plant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Additional public comment.
I have 2 points I want to make. One is go back to this one I showed you earlier. This document that I've been writing to EPA, the answers I always get back is, we're meeting our standards. Why are you concerned? Of course they're meeting their standards. Their instruments don't measure what is really dangerous out there. The second point I want to make is that in this document is a write-up of as much of the normal things that I could get in. And I just want to read one final comment. Rocky Flats is located on an alluvial plain at the mouth of Coal Creek Canyon. And that Rocky Flats was built up by the dirt and dust and rocks coming down Coal Creek Canyon. What we need is a really good Big Thompson flood, and it would wash Rocky Flats off the map down into the residential area. They did such a lousy job. They just imploded the buildings, leaving the plutonium stored in the bottom, and covered it over with dirt. That's all I have to say.
Additional public comment. Yes, ma'am.
Trustees, I'm Megan Davis. I'm with the Boulder County Commissioner's Office, and I just want to extend thanks on behalf of the commissioners who weren't able to be here tonight. They sent me to provide any updates or information that you might want. And, I know that they really value the partnership with the town of Superior, and really appreciate that you've given this a very robust dialogue, and that it went through both your Parks and Rec Advisory Board and your Open Space Advisory Board to have that conversation and dialogue. So we appreciate the information, and I certainly will be taking back. I've taken lots of notes, and we'll be taking back all of that input. And feel free to reach back out to us if you want to have additional conversation. So,
Thank you.
And Megan, this has all been recorded, and they
Okay.
are welcome to watch the entire
Right.
session.
I'll share that. The link's on the website, I'm guessing.
Ab-
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sandy Hammerly, 2855 Rock Creek Circle. I first wanted to say thank you to my neighbor for coming and speaking. She left, but she did a beautiful job. But I just wanted to put into the record so everybody who's watching tonight would actually hear the statement that was adopted by the Parks Rec Open Space Advisory Committee, and it says, the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee, PROSTAC, based upon the current information that's been provided to the committee, the members of PROSTAC do not support the town participating in the FLAP grant and do not support a trail that crosses through the Rocky Flats site. I would further go on to say, as a private citizen, it would be incredibly disappointing to me with all the many things that we can do in our town that we could spend $75,000 or $122,000, that we would even consider something that is as controversial and potentially, even though we don't know, potentially unsafe to our citizens. We would not do anything else in this community that we thought could be a potential risk to our citizens. And I really appreciate the strong statements by many of you that you too would not want to put any of our residents at harm. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Sarah, and I'm from Boulder. And thank you all for your stands tonight on this. I'm actually not.
Sarah, can we get your last name?
Yeah, it's Rimmel, Sarah Rimmel.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to say that I'm not super familiar with this, the history around this. It seems very dangerous and very painful just to hear how many people have been sick from this. And again, I just want to thank you all for your leadership on this in the past and currently, and really just speak to some of our bordering towns and areas who really will be looking at making a decision around this in the future. I know that with Westminster, for instance, they recently put out a call for creating an inclusiveness board or committee. So I just really want to just get us all to think a little bit about connecting the dots. This is inclusiveness. This is about inclusivity. The people who end up getting most hurt and sick from this are people who are more marginalized. And just, I really encourage us all in different towns and cities to connect all of the dots around this and connect the long-term impacts of this and connect to the piece around we're in Boulder, in Superior, in Colorado, we're all about being healthy. And I'm sure so many of us are going to go home this week and exercise and, want to eat right and take care of our lives. And if we're doing that on one hand, but then we're also supporting these policies and these things about that are going to make, maybe it's simple, maybe, for whatever reason people are wanting to support this, it doesn't connect to some of the other values that people might hold. So I just really hope that we all just take the time to do that more. It's so important for now, for our future. So thank you.
Any additional public comment?
My name is Colleen Ambrosi. I live in Coal Creek Canyon, Jefferson County. I've lived in my home for 25 years, so I've actually lived and breathed Rocky Flats when it was open, Rocky Flats when it was closed, Rocky Flats cleanup. And watching Candelas be built has broken my heart. If this trail was ever to go through, my family has already taken a vow that nobody's going to go near it. I have children that have been in buses from Coal Creek Canyon down to Ralston Valley High School, and I just pray every day when they're on those buses that the windows are closed and they're not breathing what has happened in Candelas. So I can't thank you enough for really taking the lead on this and feeling the energy that is so evident from you all about each reasons that you have. So I wanted to just thank you so much.
Any additional public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll put the motion up.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-29, Series 2016, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior supporting a grant request for the Rocky Mountain Greenway Rocky Flats National Wildlife Refuge Federal Lands Access Program on behalf of local entities in Jefferson, Broomfield, and Boulder counties.
A motion by trustee Hanson, second by Mayor Pro Tem Williams. All those in favor?
Do we have to?
It's a roll call, there's money involved.
Roll call vote.
It's not, no, we're not spending. Okay.
It would have been if we, yes.
It still is until.
I think we were spending money on this.
Cirelli?
No.
Dozell?
No.
Folsom?
No.
Gregorius?
No.
Hanson?
No.
Pennington?
No.
Williams?
No.
Okay, motion fails.
And I just want to thank everyone involved for all these years and all your efforts to make us all safe. I really appreciate that, and you've gone in a huge mile and a long journey, and I really appreciate it. And if it weren't for you all that have done this for decades, we wouldn't be here helping you and helping the next generation. Thank you.
To extend a deep gratitude to you folks for sticking through the long fight here, and unfortunately it's going to be longer, as you know. So there are lots more meetings to come. I eat your protein bars. Trish, I wanted to address your concern about the visitor center. That's the next battle, and we intend to fight it. I intend to fight it. I know these people intend to fight it. I'm not saying the board has to decide if they're going to help fight it. The other thing is, you're from Broomfield. I thought somebody mentioned Westminster. Please, please be at those meetings. Again, Boulder, May 3rd. Boulder County, May 5th or 10th. I heard Westminster may be May 10th, but I'm on the website. Call me. I'll know those dates. So be at those meetings as well. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have something? Okay. No. Okay. All right. Thank you all, and we'll move on to item number 14 on their agenda, which is adoption of a resolution approving a construction contract with Brannon Sand and Gravel for the 2016 street rehabilitation program.
Thank you, Mayor. We are getting ready for our, as you said, our 2016 street rehabilitation project. As the board's aware, town's been very aggressive in our street improvement project over the years, and we're finally getting out of our residential streets and into the main roads. Next year, staff has identified, or this year, staff has identified Rock Creek Circle as the road for improvement. Alex has presentation he'll go over with you, and then we'll answer any questions you might have.
Alex Arnold, Director of Public Works. Two things tonight. We want to decide on the project for this year, and also to move forward with a contractor. We've been working with Brannon. Brannon was our contractor last year. We had I've been here 4 years and have been through several contractors, and last year's project went about as smooth as we've had. So we have a good team, and they've agreed to keep the same crews on there, the same supervisor and so forth that we worked with last year. We also negotiated prices with them. I asked them to look at their asphalt prices because our new energy prices had come down, so they did give us a price, their current prices, which is about 6% less than last year on the asphalt. Some of their other prices had various adjustments, and we compared them with prices that are out on the street right now. So we think we got a very good deal with Brannon and a good crew. So the project we're recommending tonight is on Rock Creek Circle, and here's Colton Road and the Summit, Rock Creek Circle from Colton that wraps around down by the by Starbucks and by Land Rover. So we're going to be doing our reconstruct project where we reconstruct the subgrade with fly ash and then come in with 8 inches of asphalt. I wanted to show you how we're going to construct this. Going to do it in 3 segments. First from Colton Road to Castle Peak. So that segment of road will be shut down. So the people on East Torrey's Peak will have to go out the other way to get to Colton. Castle Peak will be open, but you'll have to turn right to get out. You won't be able to turn left. So that'll be one segment. That'll be the first segment that will be done. Next segment will be from Castle Peak to Yarrow, and Yarrow Circle here, you won't be able to get out, but you'll be able to get back to the other portion of Yarrow Circle and get out to Rock Creek Circle and to Colton that way. Castle Peaks, you'll be able to turn left to get out to get to Colton. So I think we've got the neighborhood covered on that. And then finally, we would do the last segment from Yarrow to Colton. This is a little more tricky because we will have to shut down the driveway of Land Rover. So that driveway we have to shut down. There's some real issues with grades there that we want to reconstruct that driveway. So they'll have to go out to Colton from the 2 driveways they have in that little development. We are planning a community meeting, tentatively scheduled for May 12th, with the residents to explain the project, the process, and the detours and so forth. We will have a special meeting with the businesses to explain how their driveway is going to work and how the circulation will work when the road is closed, when that driveway is closed. So with that, if there's any questions, Chris.
I guess it'll be made clear that the exit from the Starbucks parking lot, so there's the one right off of Colton, that entrance there, but you can't exit through that.
Yeah,
So
we may have to make a modification on that. We're still working that out of how that's going to work. I think it's a entrance only. You can't.
That's right. You can't. You can come in that way, but you're not. It says no exit.
Right. So we are going to work on that, figure out how that's going to operate.
Okay. And just the other thing, just a comment that I support this organization. They did a phenomenal job on our street last year and in our whole subdivision. The asphalt's holding up very, very well. They were very nice. They were very accommodating on our street because we had to have access to our garage because we have an electric car. So we had to get in there every single night to charge the car. And they built a ramp and just super nice people. So, and the job was done very well. So I recommend this.
A question and a comment. First, what is the performance period you're looking at, particularly how roughly when are you doing each segment?
They'll probably be closed for maybe 2 weeks at a time, so it's probably a 6-week time period, and there may be some weeks apart. So 2 weeks probably for each segment, and they'll start probably around right after Memorial Day in terms of the asphalt. We'll get in there and do the concrete work first. There's a bunch of concrete work that has to be done along with this.
As always, it depends on weather, too.
Oh, yeah, of course. You're going to have to be really creative with that third segment because that personal knowledge, that Starbucks parking lot and Land Rover parking lot's really a zoo as it is currently set up.
Right.
And when you're going to have that one driveway handling all the traffic, that's going to be exciting. I'm going to sit outside and watch that.
I mean, unfortunately, when that was put in, it never was really put in right because it was an afterthought. Rock Creek Circle was built, and then they put that driveway in, and it doesn't really work very well. So we need to get in there and make some adjustments. So we'll figure out a way of getting this done.
And talk to them as soon as you can because they're going to be. I hope they're not going to be. Well, I know they won't be surprised, but it's not going to be good for them.
Yeah. So we'll meet with them and then try to come up with solutions and work with them. The contractor is really good about doing that.
So Rock Creek Circle is the only project that
Yes.
Brandon will work on and the only street construction project we have this summer?
For this summer, they are actually doing some patching right now.
Right,
So
but
we
this
use
is
them-
the only one. There aren't in another area.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Just curious, how many miles is Rock Creek Circle? I mean, it's under a mile, right?
It's probably half a mile.
Half a
maybe.
mile.
Yeah, it's less than a mile.
Okay.
And why, if oil prices have fallen so much, has this just fallen 6%?
Well, oil prices don't directly correlate with asphalt.
Positive correlate, or a negative correlate, oil
There's
prices
some oil,
down there.
asphalt has
Yeah,
rock.
positive correlation.
Asphalt has rock and other things in it. So
Yeah.
the oil is, the ton of asphalt, there's only a certain percentage of oil, and it's a different type of oil than gas. So it reflects a decrease anyway. Now, oil prices have gone up, so we got the price before oil prices started going up.
If oil prices had gone up as much as they have gone down, we would see more than a 6% price increase, trust me.
Well, let's get this contract signed because oil prices are going up.
Huh?
So we
Yeah, oil
better get
prices
this
are going
signed
up.
because the oil prices, so I'm ready to make a motion unless we need public comment. Is there any public comment? Yeah.
Okay. Anything further for Alex, please? Okay. Public comment?
Sandy Hammerly again, 2855 Rock Creek Circle. I happen to be the vice president of the Homeowners Association at the Summit at Rock Creek, and we are the only community that will be affected by this entire thing. And so I would like to ask that the town please, please, please have town staff come out and meet with the residents of the Summit at Rock Creek on our property and discuss this with us, because this will be incredibly disruptive to the 226 people who live. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but I really think our 226 residents, who tend to be neglected overall in this community because we live in multi-family units, that we get a little bit of special attention and that the town come up and meet with us personally. Thank you.
And I'll just respond. Alex mentioned that we're going to have community meetings, and there'll be specific invites to those residents.
Patricia Dunham, 3574 Huron Peak. I would just also note that August 18th starts school again, so
That's why I
that
asked about scheduling.
and that has bus routes that go down that should be accounted for. If due to weather, I realize that you might get into the project and extends, but to keep that date in mind.
Okay. Any additional public comment? Okay, any further discussion? All right. Any motion?
I'll make a motion. Town of Superior Resolution Number R30, Series 2016, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a construction contract with Brandon Sand and Gravel Company for the 2016 Street Rehabilitation Program.
Motion by Trustee Dozell, second by Mayor Pro Tem Williams. Roll call vote?
Dozell?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
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 Pennington?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Cirilli?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimous. Anything further for a meeting? Okay, thank you. We are adjourned.
Did we reschedule that retreat?